The idea of free roam Five Nights at Freddy's in a 3D environment is not really a new one. I mean, the series itself has sort of adjusted to this just being the new standard now, and turning your eyes to GameJolt's everlasting Freddy's page will reveal the countless examples of 3D free roam fan games based on the series, some of them being extremely popular. However, if we were to turn time back a bit, specifically spanning from 2014 to 2016, these free roam fan games turned more into experimental 3D experiences centered around Five Nights at Freddy's. And for some reason, these games in particular have always piqued my interest. And I'd assume anyone else who constantly recreated FNAF locations in Minecraft. Seriously though, just the idea of physically getting up from that office chair and exploring around the different pizzeria locations has been something I've always personally wanted to see ever since I was introduced to the series back in 2014. So I wanted to go over a few of the most popular ones back in the day and see if they hold up. I don't know, I'm not really putting these up to any sort of a standard. And what better game to start with than the very first one, being called Five Nights at Freddy's 3D Demo. Not really the most interesting name. While the fan game would officially release in late December of 2014, the game was technically one of the first FNAF fan games ever to be published to GameJolt, dating back to late September of the same year. Created by Void Production, credited as your name in the credits, that's a good sign. Five Nights at Freddy's 3D Demo definitely is something along those lines. The fan game itself is extremely simple. There's literally only 3 levels to the game, 2 of which taking place in the same spot, which is a layout you're hopefully a little familiar with now. Given its age, the map is surprisingly pretty accurate here, at least layout-wise, to the original game. While of course able to be freely roamed about, fitting in every single room and area you'd expect. Just, looking like a little different than I remember. However, for being a game specifically meant to be a 3D version of Five Nights at Freddy's, there's surprisingly not really anything of note to do here, besides just sitting in the office, looking at cameras. I guess it's not really all that different then. In fact, the first thing the game actually prompts you to do is to leave. Okay. After grabbing a flashlight and a night vision camera, both of which I can't exactly use for some reason, you're prompted to the game's second level, in which you're meant to grab 5 floppy disks at Freddy's out in the pouring rain at night right outside the pizzeria. While my version doesn't entirely function correctly, I guess, Golden Freddy here is meant to stalk you while you attempt to finish this task. For some reason, he doesn't move at all for me. I mean, I guess I'm the lucky one. Look at this guy. He got skinned alive. There's not much to this area, as you'd probably expect from the very first thing you're shown here. It's a very small city, literally a road circling I think a burnt down grocery store. So finding these soggy floppy disks isn't really that hard at all. After which you return to the pizzeria. I guess I just completely forgot about the apartment side quest. Find the animatronics are active now. Sorta, they still can't kill you here, and return to the office, in which the game then prompts you to leave. This is the end of the demo. While there is video of supposedly the actual earliest build of this game, although it's, it's something. This would remain as Five Nights at Freddy's first 3D free roam fan game published to GameJolt, which means it just barely missed the mark of being the first to be actually released there. Okay, so yes, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Massacre was the first fan game to be released in an actual playable build. Yeah, this is, technically speaking, the very first FNAF 3D free roam fan game that you could play on GameJolt. Created by Zamins when they were 12 years old and taking very little inspiration from the original. I mean, come on, just look at it. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Massacre is a first-person shooter created in FPS Creator Reloaded, in which you physically mow down a bunch of Freddys in a vaguely shaped area to the pizzeria from the first game. Other than getting to the office spot, which offers you a check for doing the Bite of 87, I guess we did that. There's not much else at all to this game. It seems to be a common occurrence. And it also seems that's kind of why these games were really publicly recognized early on, at least in the YouTube scene. There just really wasn't a whole lot to them. That was until Fazbear Nightmare. Fazbear Nightmare's first publicly available version was released in January of 2015 by Valsina Productions, a few months shy of basically everything else so far, offering a similar perspective on this free roam concept of the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, I think. However, a little different than the rest, this fan game's biggest claim to fame comes from the fact that it was actually featured on Steam's website for a pretty good amount of time. I specifically remember being really confused about what this actually was. It always used to pop up when you searched up the series. And unbeknownst to me, Scott Cawthon actually approved this fan game for release here, specifically requiring it to be a mod for FNAF 3, essentially, and of course, had to be free to play. Here, you play as Rebecca, a reporter tasked with finding any information possible about the missing Mike Schmidt, who was last seen at Freddy's, obviously. Literally totally armed with a night vision camera, you have to survive each hour of one night at Freddy's to supposedly escape the pizzeria. There's only 2 hours available in this demo, so yeah. One of the most striking things you'll probably notice right off the bat when actually playing this is, well, besides that, is that most of the functions of the pizzeria aren't really available. Basically meaning that the office doors, practically the main mechanic of the original, don't work. It's a little surprising, sure. Well, I guess based on what we've seen so far, not really. But it seems that the game really wanted to reinforce this idea of not exactly standing still. The only characters you'll run into on your first hour, a reminder, this game treats hours like nights, is Bonnie and the marionettes, who all look lovely, by the way. I actually really do like these models. They're very unnerving. Bonnie will essentially monitor the general layout of the pizzeria with no footstep audio at all, mind you, and when found, chase you for a short amount of time until you're able to get behind a wall or something. The problem arises mainly with the puppets. Ghostly being here, able to float and literally fly straight through walls that's only able to be viewed on your small night vision camera. A pretty cool concept that's honestly used kind of well here. Even on the second hour of the game, acting as a second night again, the difficulty is ramped up by quite a bit, honestly. Simply making the puppet a little faster than normal and adding Chica into the mix. Now, this becomes quite an issue just due to how small this map is. Don't get me wrong, for January of 2015, this is a pretty remarkable recreation of the first game's map, even with a few tweaks that, would make sense here. But it's all the more apparent, at least I think, why this fan game genre didn't really pop off as much early on. The pizzeria layout from Five Nights at Freddy's 1, at least I think, is meant to really capture a tight, dark, and almost uncomfortably claustrophobic space. I mean, these animatronics take up entire hallways, and the majority of rooms here, like the sites not seen by the cameras, aren't even completely shown directly to the player. While these fan games do a pretty good job at recreating these environments that we don't really get to see a good picture of almost ever, it sort of fails at just making it fun to roam around in general. Besides the initial shock of roaming Freddy's, of course.
Whoa! Whoa! What the fuck do I do?
In a simpler picture, using the map one-to-one is just not a great idea to me. Especially if the doors of the office don't work. It just makes this place a death trap. Other than that, the numerous times I've been able to literally clip out of the map, and some of the most bizarre jump scares that I've ever seen in a video game before. Oh. Get away! Get away! Please. 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 Okay, good. Oh. It acts pretty much as you'd expect. But if you're even remotely tapped into Fazbear Nightmare's general fan game history, you know this isn't necessarily the end. I mean, the game looked like it was promising the ability to freely roam around in, at the very least, the first 4 games' environments. Besides a few community posts and behind-the-scenes images here and there, in 2019, a complete revamp of the same title, essentially, would be released under the name of Fazbear Nightmare Midnight Investigator. With a more direct story, improved graphics, a functional office area now, and, well, slightly better gameplay mechanics, I guess, the successor definitely succeeds at offering a more true 3D free roam FNAF experience. Even if it maybe gets rid of a lot of things I personally liked about the original, but hey. Nowadays, it seems that Fazbear Nightmare has been kind of moved on from, with the Steam page being delisted, actually not too long ago, and the creator working on bigger and better projects. Ones that could actually be properly funded and supported in the right ways, so good on them. Now that we're in a more familiar territory with these free roam fan games, I do want to address something that, well, I may have lied about again in the beginning, because depending on your definition of a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game, this could also technically count as the very first free roam one. I mean, it was on GameJolt, so. The first iteration of Five Nights at Freddy's Doom was released all the way back in Halloween of 2014 by Scorn Demon, just about 3 months after the release of FNAF 1, and about 5 days before the Pizza Massacre. You heard that right, Five Nights at Freddy's Doom is in fact a mod for the original Doom games. But I think counts as a free roam fan game in a way. I don't know, it's different enough. Here, after gently parking your car on the side of the road, you decide to take refuge from the nice weather outside in this strange, long abandoned pizza establishment, where you get to introduce yourself to a few kooky characters with nice intentions.
What am I playing? What am I playing? Help!
FNAF Doom, as you might expect, feels a lot like playing Doom. because you are. Copying over most of the game controls and slippery physics, but this time, well, I mean, you're stuck at Freddy's.
Why are we all here? Why are we all here? Why are we all here? Guys, leave my room! It's mine!
Compared to everything else I've covered so far, this is definitely the most complete feeling experience to a free roam FNAF. Probably because it's one of the only ones I listed that did actually get properly finished. Our main stars here, of course, are the animatronics, fully fit with those classic Ignis models who will, of course, attack you later on in the nights. The animatronic AI here works a bit funnily? Funnily? Is that even a word? In which you're basically always locked onto when they're active, or not randomly stuck somewhere. Hiding basically doesn't do a single thing here at all. It doesn't help that these animatronics are literally some of the smartest beings I've ever been chased by, actively finding routes and like cutting you off from certain rooms. It was easily the most frustrating part in this entire mod. Most of the time here, you're gonna wanna be either stuck in the office or running from them in the giant dining room area. For just how early this game came out, reminder, about 3 months after the release of FNAF 1, I really feel like this map works so well on a gameplay aspect. Staying nice and open so you can like slip and slide away from the animatronics, even in the office corridors and hallways. In addition, a bunch of vents have been placed around, usually connecting areas that weren't previously connected to each other in the original, so you'll never really find yourself in a bad spot here. Except this specific spot, this one's bad.
Okay, well, Bonnie, let's think about this.
The actual office, definitely being the best spot to put yourself in, does feel a little empty. It doesn't help that the sole camera spot you're able to monitor is just the dining room on a big flat screen TV front and center here. Can't even get a good look at Foxy, but hey, the doors work, so that's always a plus. While Bonnie and Chica are practically identical fast-moving killer robot guys, Freddy and Foxy, as you'd probably expect, act a little differently. Foxy activates randomly throughout the night, basically gunning it towards your main direction with some pretty attention-grabbing music. And Freddy is honestly a little complicated to explain. I'm fairly certain that he acts more as a weeping angel type here, as in only moving towards you when not being directly looked at. However, he also likes to just teleport around the place, including your office sometimes, run around the dining room like a maniac, startle you around corners. This might be Golden Freddy, I'm not really sure. And my personal favorite, whenever the power goes out, just flat out T-pose straight towards you. A few new mechanics are also introduced here to make free roam more of an enjoyable experience. For starters, the entire game can be played with a friend, up to 8 actually, which no doubt probably makes this a lot more fun to go through. If I knew how to host a multiplayer server for Doom, that is. Power outages here do not necessarily mean a dead run like in the original, as finding a randomly generated key around the map and using it to fix the generator directly behind the office will actually restore the power to the doors, which is super nice because these nights last about like 12 minutes each. They're pretty long for some reason. The full 2014 version of this mod includes 6 full nights that range in difficulty level, as you'd probably expect. However, on the 7th night, named question mark, is where things are a little more interesting.
Oh, it's Foxy!
Yeah, Foxy here will chase you down for the entire night. And to add to it, there's no door controls in the office anymore. It's just you and Foxy. And eventually Bonnie and Chica, they show up too. If I'm being totally honest, I feel like most people's introduction to this game, at least right now, was probably through the remake that got popular on Roblox for a good bit, remaining scarily like 1-to-1 with the mod's eventual remake that happened about mid-2018. Which, you guessed it, is a remake through and through. This would come pretty quickly with eventual sequels of the next 3 titles in the series, and subsequent remakes of those same titles. But there's something really charming about the first one here to me. Whether it was because it was made in around like 2 weeks, or just the way the game looks, it's actually pretty impressive. And still stands as a really fun way to experience Five Nights at Freddy's and, well, you know, at least like 3 different dimensions. While there were a few others floating around this time, nothing here really stood out that much from being the usual recreation of the first game. That was until Those Nights at Fredbear's, kinda. Those Nights at Fredbear's is quite a complicated game to talk about, but I just couldn't go without mentioning it. For the longest time, all the way back in May of 2015 when it was first announced, Those Nights at Fredbear's, created by Nikson, who at the time was predominantly making FNAF SFM videos, probably stood as the most highly anticipated fan game for its time. looking to be completely set in Fredbear's Family Diner, where you'd be able to, free roam around the place. But as many already know, this fan game never officially came out, even with the teasers and early gameplay footage that came from it. Nikson initially blaming it on the game being corrupted by bugs related to the free roam aspect of the game, then kind of chalking it up to a simple lack of interest in the project. This, of course, wouldn't stop eventual recreations of this game. I mean, even to this day, somehow. However, just before those Nights of Fredbear's cancellation was really set in stone here, would be Nikson's first ever publicly released fan game, under the name of Unreal Shift at Freddy's. And, well, I guess calling it a game is a bit of a reach here. It's simply put, a roamable version of the pizzeria from the first game. No animatronic movements, no real gameplay. I mean, there's barely anything to interact with here as a whole. In fact, the only reason I personally remember this game was because of the jump scare right here. But again, for the time, this was pretty cool and saw a lot of popularity on YouTube because of it. Despite this pretty high popularity though, and a planned release for the full version of the game, promising to be completely playable this time on Halloween of 2015, Nikson decided to pretty quickly afterward just move on from the project as a whole, leading to the development of The Joy of Creation 2015 soon after. Moving like prime Scott Cawthon here. But, I mean, this really isn't a free roam game at all, and acted more as a demo for what's to come. Quite a long history lesson here, I know. Because in mid-2016, Nikson would reveal the sort of remake of this exact game. It is definitely a little different. Yet another project called The Joy of Creation, just with Reborn slapped at the end of it. Featuring 4 different maze-like levels where you'd have to run and collect different items on a time limit while being pursued by mangled, ignited, if you will, versions of either Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, or Foxy. The Joy of Creation Reborn became a huge hit online, as many already know by now. Basically any popular FNAF YouTuber at the time was directly covering this, and I think the free roam nature of the game definitely helped with that. It's what piqued many's interest in those Nights of Fredbear's to begin with. It wasn't just a remake of FNAF 1 in 3D. It offered different map layouts, character mechanics, and honestly a pretty addictive gameplay style, when it wasn't like super annoying. I'd confidently say that this was a big turning point towards a specific genre of fan games, even if it only served as a demo for the main course that is the Joy of Creation story mode. And we definitely see a bit of this switch up going forward, like with what I'm going to be talking about. In mid-2016, again, UHQ Games would release a demo for a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game named Sinister Turmoil. A combination of 2 words that I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to mean. At the time, besides the Joy of Creation, I felt that this was one of the most popular free roam fan games to almost exist. And I think these designs had a lot to do with that. I mean, basically grabbing an animatronic, painfully removing their eyes, and stapling on some nightmare teeth will do that to you. In fact, this sinister category of characters wasn't even all this fan game had to offer, essentially promising any assortable classification that could possibly be given to a Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic here.
We have Sinister Freddy, Sinister Chica, Sinister Springtrap,
Phantom Bonnie,
Nightmare Phantom Foxy, Sinister Candy, Nightmare Ignited Freddy, Sinister Ignited Chica,
Five Nights at Freddy's 1 Wither Bonnie,
Five Nights at Freddy's 1 Sinister Foxy, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 Freddy,
Five Nights at Freddy's 1 Nightmare Chica,
Possessed Freddy, Sinister Simon, and Sinister
Pop Ghost.
The point of the game and why its appeal grew so much was kind of due to a few little things. Graphically, it looked pretty good. I'd say even to today's standards. Of course, also these sinister looking guys, and the fact that it just promised online multiplayer, specifically being able to play as the animatronics, presumably against other people. Each sinister animatronic, there are quite a few here, had different stats that would influence your gameplay, to some extent. Some of them don't make a whole lot of sense to me though. However, while these promises were quite big, and the demos provided, there's actually not a whole lot to do. The story mode demo, or physics demo, there were quite a few names for them, makes you play as someone wandering around an almost impossibly dilapidated building, where you meet a few of these sinister animatronics, and that's about it. You explore a few floors of the building, eventually make your way to the downstairs elevator, greeted by a floating sinister Freddy, and yeah, that's it. The only thing we really learn here, story-wise, is that this place was supposedly abandoned around 30 years ago for some reason. I mean, these guys might have something to do with it, and a lot of employees went insane here. I can see why. Traversing this place is a nightmare. The second gameplay demo, which offers even less here, lets you roam around as Springtrap in a place reminiscent of Fazbear's Fright, I guess. You can sprint, jump, and Well, that's practically it. However, despite the admittedly cool concept for the fan game and the amount of teaser images we got afterward, from then on, this entire project's development became a little rocky, to say the least, and was eventually handed over to another developer, which created Sinister Turmoil Sewers in 2020, which, besides having an animatronic with scary-looking teeth, is very different from its initial concept, and is also supposedly getting a remake from these same new developers sometime soon. Final Night's Redux, a prologue demo, served as an official reimagining of the first game in the Final Night's fan game series. A pretty popular series at that, you've probably heard of it before. Made by the same creator, Jelly Liam, the first installment of Final Nights is admittedly a bit dated, and yeah, definitely a little strange.
Oh, what was that?
So I'd assume this project was originally made in order to flesh this specific series starter out a little. Here you play as Mike Schmidt, immediately after leaving his night shift duties. In fact, you're right back home. However, when a mysterious box shows up on the foot of his bed, something that seems familiar to him somehow, it prompts a visit by a purple puppet. Sources are telling me this character's name is the Brother, so yeah, I guess his brother. After losing a 1v1 just horribly, by the way, our job is to make sure little bro here doesn't enter our humble abode by any means necessary. As the Redux in the title of the fan game implies, this is in fact a sort of remake of the first Final Nights, specifically the prologue section of that game, if you couldn't tell. However, while Final Nights 1 did actually feature a free roam segment, the prologue itself wasn't actually free roam. It's also just not very fun to play.
Stop. Oh my. It's the worst game ever made. It's the worst game ever made. It's the worst game ever made.
Instead of just looking around your living room area this time, you're free to explore the different rooms of Mike's house here. Not that any of them are all that interesting though. However, the brother seems to think so, as he'll try climbing through windows, entering doors, our TV. I mean, even Mike's shower here isn't a safe place anymore. Also, it seems Mike never really fully learned how to grab a doorknob correctly. I'll be honest, after playing through it, I don't really see that much of a reason for this remake to fully use free roam in this way. Usually, at least most of the time, you're gonna want to position yourself right in front of the TV, as standing here lets you see and hear every available spot that Brother's going to be in. I mean, literally sort of just going back to how the original played, in a way. Anyway, every in-game hour here, a new memory will appear somewhere in the house, in the form of a physical plushie or key that you need to collect. Collecting all of them without dying, obviously, will allow you to finally open that chest. Never mind, I forgot it was a demo. While the demo is pretty short, this is practically all there is to it, I definitely do think it serves as a fun little step up from the original concept of the prologue night. I mean, you know, no competition, really. Despite this, the project as a whole would seemingly get canceled due to the dev just simply wanting to work on other games at the time. Overnight 2 Redux, or Reboot, just R here, is like many others, a 3D free roam recreation of a Five Nights at Freddy's game. But this time it's FNAF 2, so it's slightly different. If this looks familiar, it's probably because it is. This game specifically got super popular due to different playthroughs on YouTube. And while it's certainly not the first to basically recreate FNAF 2 in free roam, I think it's still a very interesting case. There's a lot more to it than just that. Trust me. Given the free roam nature of the game, you can venture anywhere you want in the FNAF 2 location. Hopefully we've grasped this concept by now. However, there's a slight problem to this. Yeah, this map just does not cut free roam standards. I mean, look at it. Just like the game it's based off of, this one completely works around a music box mechanic. But here you, well, instead of doing this, you physically have to wind the music box at the prize corner, meaning that there's really no reason at all to not spend about 90% of your time in the dining hall, since it's filled with places to hide and just is generally pretty big, especially compared to, again, the death trap that is the FNAF 2 office. There's also a functional camera system here, however, you're not really ever going to need it. The animatronics are pretty easy to spot here, taking a lot of inspiration on how Nikson did the ignited animatronics prior. Speaking of the toy animatronics, who you'd probably think would be kind of important here, aren't. They actually don't move ever, forever stuck in their static poses on the show stage. The withered animatronics instead take the main spotlight in this game. Literally, their eyes are so bright here. Bonnie acts as Bonnie in every game here. He functions with a basic AI that moves around the map and attempts to catch you when spotted. To counteract these guys, players are given quite a plentiful amount of hiding spots, including lockers, tables, vents. Actually, that's it. Freddy has a pretty interesting mechanic here though, as he can actually be stalled for a good chunk of time during the early hours of the night. This radio here, hanging out just next to the parts and service room, kinda acts as a personal music box for him. Every so often, you can periodically stop the radio, before the minute or so it takes for Freddy to successfully wake up. Foxy is practically identical to the others, just being able to be stunned by a flash beacon that for some reason replaces your main flashlight on night 3. Honestly, it makes it so much harder to see here. I don't really know why this was done. The game takes a lot of cues from Sister Location, actually, at least in its main story. The phone guy during the nights, acting as a... well, you can just hear it for yourself.
Hello, I am Daniel Bot, version 0.67, and I am part of the OpenAI system by Elon Musk.
While nights 1, 2, and 3 are your standard rising in difficulty nights that we're all pretty used to by now, besides a pretty strange cutscene after night 3.
Turn around! Was that me? Did I win?
Night 4 changes things up a bit. Instead of a normal night, at least at first, you're given 2 choices based on the phone call you hear at the beginning. This time made from an assistant manager named Tom, warning us that the AI we've heard has now been hijacked and to not trust it no matter what.
I have to go soon. I'm hearing something in the distance. This is my last night here before I report everything I've learned from local media. I just wanted to save someone's life if I possibly can. Good luck.
Again, a lot of cues from Sister Location. However, our trusty Daniel bot moves back in, informing us that the reason nothing's on is because the generator needs to be reset in a previous room we've actually never been in before. But we're also given the choice to just simply leave the location as a whole. I don't know, I guess we get bored. And if you're feeling even lazier, not even attempting to do anything here, you could simply just wait till the night starts, as eventually things will kind of get started pretty quick. The only thing that really changes this night is a separate music box you'll have to wind next to the parts and service room, which makes camping the other music box not really optimal anymore. It's actually a lot harder now, and the fact that Chica is awake. However, going to the secret generator room instead prompts a quick visit by Shadow Bonnie, I think, telling us that he, well, I guess he did the murders this time, and also murders me. However, ditching that plan entirely and just leaving the place prompts a special night, where Shadow Bonnie and the marionette have somehow followed you all the way back home, and you're tasked with fending your property off against them. Shadow Bonnie works in kind of a strange way, as during the night, random lights in your house will go off, connected to certain rooms here, that you'll have to turn back on quickly, or red mist will track you down. I guess this being Shadow Bonnie. And the marionette is just kinda under your bed, where you have to turn this lamp back on periodically, or you'll die. I'll be honest, this night is incredibly difficult, simply due to Shadow Bonnie and the way these lights function. While some rooms will have the light switch just outside the door they inhabit, other rooms will have them inside the room. This mixed with just how fast this red smoke appears, and the tight doorways of these same rooms makes him really difficult to manage, all on top of dealing with the marionette as well. So yeah, if you're stubborn like me, standing on this toilet will win you the night, so yay!
Whatever. Yay! Oh, I did it legit. That was legit.
On top of all of this, there also is a Night 5 for this game. A very evil Night 5. Here you're dealing with practically everything you've managed before, mixed in one. 2 separate music boxes, Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy. Chica's still in parts and service somehow, guess she's a Night 4 exclusive here, all chasing after you. Plus, you get Balloon Boy this night too. His super fun mechanic is that he's a Weeping Angel type, and if you happen to run into him, he heavily distorts your screen for a small bit of time and glues you to the floor. Super fun. By the way, this second music box I keep mentioning is Shadow Bonnie. He'll just instantly kill you if you don't wind it. Upon completion of this evil night, you're given a cutscene involving Golden Freddy, who's, well, I mean, honestly, I don't really know what's going on here. Also included in the Night 5 version of the game is actually a fixed version of Night 4's home invasion section, thankfully adding lights to the outside of the different rooms here, and making Shadow Bonnie much slower. Still pretty hard though. Completing it gets you a new cutscene where, again, I just don't really know. And that's pretty much all there is to Overnight 2 Redux. As much as I like to make fun of it here, this is honestly pretty fun to mess around in. something I kind of neglected to mention here was that the developer of this game was around 13 years old when first developing it, along with the previous overnight installments, which I didn't really mention here because they're just so similar to the other remakes. And last, but certainly not least, is the Joy of Creation Halloween Edition. It's an extremely simple game, much like the animatronic levels from the Joy of Creation Reborn. Could probably pick up on that. Here, you need to gather enough tools around a remixed version of Fazbear's Frights to burn the entire place down, and a scary stalking animatronic along with it. Your only level of defense in this game is really the security system that seems to be tapped into your smartphone that can play an audio lure in the specific location you set it at. Although it's admittedly a little hard to distinguish which room's which. Ignited Springtrap, I'll call him, is quite a funny little creature. While the cameras can stall him for a bit, it's really not the most reliable thing to use in the world. So if ever nearby, I mean, your best bet is to simply hit the fetal position in a corner somewhere with your flashlight off.
Save me, Bonnie. You saved me.
After slamming a few pipes down and grabbing a lighter, making your way back to the entrance of the place ensues an ending where you share a final fiery embrace with a character that looks an awful lot like another one I remember. And with that is, at the very least, some of the most popular 3D free roam FNAF fan games that came out when this series literally just started allowing you to move to other rooms. I could absolutely go on with even more of these same free roam fan games here. However, with the release of Nikson's The Joy of Creation story mode, I feel that most developers around this time were sort of getting the hang of how to make these types of games. And the 3D experimental phase, along with my general interest in how these games could be handled from then on, kind of started to fade away. And I mean, no offense, but it definitely didn't help that the majority of the games here on out were just kind of remakes of the original games anyway. It's pretty concrete now on how to handle a free roam FNAF. Again, there are countless examples of fan games that do this extremely well, but that buffer period at the start still holds a special place in my heart. Oh, that rhymed. Anyway, I'm gonna finish my Minecraft recreation. It keeps blowing up for some reason. Okay, yeah, I think it's good.